Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Phya Academy newsletter. Today, we're continuing our investigation into the theme of heroism. Hey, everybody, always great to see you. Happy New Year to everybody. And I thought that a good way to start out the new year would be to look at heroism, right? This virtue, attribute, or characteristic that seemingly is in short supply these days. And as we move into 2022, perhaps all of us should think about taking on a little bit more of a heroic challenge. And in the first couple of lessons, and remember, in the email, you've got a link at the bottom of the email that gives you a thread, a video playlist of all the past lessons. Okay, so if you haven't taken a look at those previous heroism videos, you can go and do so after this. You could pause right now and freeze and go back and look at 1 and 2. They're all there for you. But some of the things that we've talked about is this importance of struggle, this importance of sacrifice, right? This ability to gain new knowledge, this ability to bring something back to the community. We've also talked about the vulnerabilities of heroism and heroic deeds, what happens when we take on too much, more than we can bear, and also not wasting the sacrifices of heroes. And I thought that we could sort of move forward on that idea of not wasting sacrifices or not properly identifying sacrifices, because there is a lot of heroic action in the world. Heroes are doing things every single day, saving lives, impacting lives, doing great things in the world at great risk to themselves. But is the hero someone that boasts about these deeds, or is the hero someone that is humble and sort of accepts their role with grace and doesn't seek out the spotlight? One of the things that's important when thinking about athletics and heroism is where is the locus or the focus of our motivation? Is it internally driven, or is it externally motivated? And we know that external motivations, fame, riches, status, those types of things, those relate more so to the boastful element. But we also know that heroes have to be public. Heroes have to perform. We have to be able to see heroic deeds, because one of the important elements of heroism is inspiring others to become heroes themselves. And this led me to the question, right? Should heroes seek the spotlight? We know that heroes will be placed in the spotlight, especially if they achieve heroic deeds. But is this something that they should intentionally seek? And I was thinking about which positions in sport offer the most sacrifice for the least amount of public reward or public commendation. And in my estimation, there is no more better example of humble heroism in sport than the offensive line in football. So for my football fans out there, I'm probably getting a whole bunch of, yes, talk about these guys, the grunts, the unsung heroes, the true warriors. For those who don't really know the sport of football, a lot of the fanfare, a lot of the accolades goes to the flashy players, right? You've got the quarterback, right? He's the leader. He's the one that touches the ball. He throws it. He delivers it. You've got the running backs, the wide receivers, the ones who score the touchdowns, who make the fancy plays. And even on defense, right, you have your attackers, the ones who get after the quarterback, get sacks. You have the ones who can intercept. There's lots of great plays available to everybody on the football field, except for the offensive line. Their role is to block. They set the stage for the offense. They're the ones who make it all happen, but they're also the ones who nobody talks about. And I love this photo, number one, because it shows us kind of the formation, right? The offensive line blocks, right? There's a defensive wall that's coming to the offense, and they have to stand up and take that abuse. The O-line is the engine. It controls the pace of the game. It actually can dictate the nature of the game in terms of a running game versus a passing game. They are heroic because they protect the vulnerable players from attack, right? They protect the quarterbacks. They throw their bodies in front of running backs, wide receivers, in order so that they may gain yards, score touchdowns, get fans, sign multi-million-dollar contracts, those types of things. While the grunts, the ones in the trenches who are doing the dirty work, they never touch the ball. You very rarely hear their names, and almost always they are faceless, right? Like, for football fans, do you even know what stats are compiled for offensive linemen? Like, when you do fantasy football, do you go and select your right guard or your center? No, because there are no individual stats that matter. The offensive line, the stat that matters is the scoreboard. Did you win or did you lose? And the people inside that room, they understand. They understand the value of these guys, right? I've got a quote here from there's quotes from so many great players. We'll go with one from Marshawn Lynch, a famous running back known as Beast Mode. I have to give credit to the offensive line. They put it out there, and I just ran with it. So a lot of credit goes to these guys behind the scenes, but very little is given in terms of public fanfare. And I found this creed, this old offensive lineman creed, which I think exemplifies this type of humble heroism or sacrifice, right? The day you chose to play offensive line was the day you chose to live in the shadow. So it's a willful sacrifice of status, of fanfare, in order to fulfill some of the most important roles on the field, right? I mean, football is a game of 11 players working in tandem. But without a strong offensive line, everybody knows your team isn't going anywhere. You chose to be the first ones blamed and the last ones acknowledged, right? When they hit the quarterback, everybody sees it and everybody knows you failed. But does anybody see that great block that allowed the running back to get into the open field? Does anybody acknowledge it? Very rarely. We give up the stars and the limelight for humility and wins. For them, it's not about individual glory, it's about the team. We are sculpted to be men of violence, but yet be protectors. So this is a very important idea, right? The warrior who knows how to sheath their sword, right? The idea of being a dangerous yet controllable person. The hero, right? The hero can't do anything if they are meek and mild and unwilling to be dangerous, in a sense, because risk carries with it the ability to act. If we want to, again, grow into a heroic character. Anyone can run full speed, but we are the men who stops his charge. I love this. I love that idea, right? That it's easy. It's easy to do the things that you know will be celebrated. But it's much more difficult to do the things that are necessary to success that will not be praised. We bring the pails and blue collars to work and we clock in. We are the determining factor in the game. So when choosing this life, know it gets real in that A and B gap. That's the gap between offense and defense. And when you read this creed, boy, does that ever sound noble. Boy, does that ever sound like something that a hero would do, right? Would give themselves up for the greater good, and in this case, for the victory of the team. The physical pounding that's taken by these incredible athletes is beyond what many people assume. We're talking about, if you're talking about at the elite levels, 300 plus pound behemoths who can run faster than you. They can run longer than you. They can sprint faster than you. And they slam into each other at the highest amount of force dozens and dozens of times a game. The bruising, the battering, the broken bones. And in that trench, there's a lot of fracas, there's a lot of bodies. The referees don't always see what goes on, so there's actually quite a lot of nastiness that's involved. And when we tend to look at these players, what do we think? How do those how do those overweight guys get to be called athletes? What do they do? All they do is smack each other around, right? So when you play the offensive line, it's almost worse than not being celebrated. You're almost kind of like derided. You're almost out of place, right? We see the chiseled physiques of linebackers, wide receivers, running backs, and then we contrast that to the, let's be honest, sometimes the flabbiness of these large offensive linemen, and we think these guys aren't doing the same types of things. So the moral of this story, I think, is pretty apparent. The hero doesn't always look like the hero, and the hero shouldn't necessarily boast about being the hero. We don't like the prima donna. We don't like the person who catches like that final score in a game-winning. It like if I've got so many ideas going. Football's such an intriguing game because of the different characters, right? You've got a wide receiver potentially who catches, a game-winning touchdown, and then they don't go off and celebrate with the team. It's like them, them, them. Is this the person that we want to hold up as the example? No, even though they made the right play at the right time to win the game, that's not the character we want to see. The character we want to see is the guy who took the hit so that the quarterback could make the throw, so that the wide receiver could make the catch. One of the most important qualities of the hero is humility. So when a hero is boasting about their deeds, this is a very good sign that he's not going to be a hero for very long, and that his heroic status is not something that is going to be persistent, consistent, and is fleeting. And we know this when looking all the way back to athletics in the ancient Greek times, especially this idea of humility, which was a powerful and penetrating force through the athletic culture of the ancient Greek world. And it all starts from that mythical poet Homer and his tales in the Iliad and the Odyssey of the proper way in which we should engage in athletics. Now, there's lots of interesting stories from the Iliad and the Odyssey that could highlight this, but I always go back to this story. This is one of my favorite stories, the chariot race. And in specifics, the episode between young Antilochus and old Menelaus. Basically, Antilochus is a young guy. He's brash. He wants to prove himself as worthy. At this point in Greek history, athletics is the purview of the kings, the tribal chieftains. But there's this element of the contest as well. So the kings and chieftains will prove themselves through objective contests in sport. So young Antilochus and old Menelaus, they're coming towards a narrows, kind of like a ravine, that's only wide enough for one chariot to go through in this race. Menelaus says, Antilochus, you're about to drive me off course. Please let me go, right? And then after we get through this sort of ravine, then you can go fast. Antilochus sees a small window of opportunity where he can cut in front of Menelaus and get into that ravine first. He does this. Menelaus stops and pulls off. Antilochus finishes the race ahead of Menelaus. But he knows Menelaus is old, and so he knows what's coming at the end of the race. And so he yells out, in the words of Homer, "Go, furious youth, ungenerous and unwise. Go, but expect not all the prize resign. Add perjury to fraud and make it thine." So basically what he's saying is, yeah, you might cross the finish line ahead of me, but you didn't do it honestly, and everyone's going to know. So when Menelaus finishes and the prizes are being distributed, he then challenges Antilochus and says, essentially, tell everybody that you didn't cheat. Tell everybody that you played fairly, and I will let you have the prize, essentially. Antilochus breaks down, right? He knows he's made something. He knows he's made an error. He knows that winning the prize isn't what's important. It's showing your character that matters the most. And so he apologizes and begs forgiveness. The prize I quit if thou thy wrath resign, the mare or aught thou ask'st be freely thine. Ere I become from thy dear friendship torn, hateful to thee and to the gods forsworn. What he says essentially is that I will give you this prize. I will give you whatever possession I have so that I will be right in your eyes and also in the eyes of the gods. Athletic victory is fleeting. It's fleeting grace, right? In the ancient Olympics, Olympic champions were given an olive wreath as their prize to symbolize this fleeting moment of perfection, because the wreath as a natural product will disintegrate and dissolve. And so there's nothing for the athlete in a year or 2 years to look back on as this sort of a token of their prize, at least officially from Olympia. So this idea of fleeting grace and heroic deeds lets us know that, again, it's not the boastful, it's not the victory, it's the journey. It's becoming the hero. It's embracing the struggle and the sacrifice and aiming ourselves towards the achievement that matters the most. Right, so what does it mean? What does it mean when thinking about humility and heroism and willingful sacrifice, especially in this realm of athletics, right? We're trying to talk about the value of athletics that it can bring to our intellectual and to our moral lives. I think what's most important about this lesson is that sport provides value in this heroic sense because sports are honest, right? You run the race or you don't. You do the workout or you don't, right? You get stronger or you don't. You get faster. And the honesty of facing the outcome in sport humbles us. The contest humbles us. The ability to know that competitors are out there who can best us humbles us tremendously. We're all subject to the contest in sport. And so the hero will then rightfully understand their deeds in this context of the journey, this context of the process, this context of becoming. And that's why I think the offensive line is so important in understanding the value of heroism through this athletic sense. They lead by example. They don't lead by boasting. They don't even lead, in a sense, through accolades or achievements, right? Their prize is the victory of their teammates. Their prize is watching their running back score a touchdown or a quarterback break records. To them, that's more important. And each of those individuals know without the offensive line, they would never reach those heights. So there's a beautiful symbiosis here that I think gives us a lot of value when thinking about our own lives and being heroes. Yes, heroes have to be public. Yes, we have to do things that others don't want to do, and we have to talk about it, right? But should we boast? Should we be Should we be the ones who put ourselves out there the most? Should we be the ones waving our own flag? And is that external motivation the thing that's actually driving our heroic deed? Because we may end up doing something good if we are driven by these external rewards or prizes or motivations. But is that fleeting moment of of ego and hubris, is that the same thing as living heroically and being a hero? I think if we think of the offensive line, it becomes very clear that's not the type of hero we want to aspire to. We want to be the humble hero. We want to be the hero that expresses their sacrifice and struggle publicly, but not pridefully. more out of a duty, a necessity. And I think that is a great lesson to move forward with in 2022. Okay, I will see everybody next week.